Okay, what story could possibly bring you a wealthy general, his wild, strange daughters, and the dodgiest bookseller you've ever heard of? Well, all of this in the beautiful setting of Los Angeles in the 1930s. That is The Big Sleep, which does all of that and much more. So much more. In fact, in 1999, it was rated as 96th on Le Mans 100 Books of the Century, and in 2005 was included in Time Magazine's 100 Books of the Century. As you can see, I'd probably rate it even higher, but these figures do give a sense of the cultural significance of this book. Sorry, voice kind of went there. Anyway, published in 1939, really early, it's Raymond Chandler's very first novel. Even though it didn't immediately sell out at the same level of fame it does now, it still set Chandler on his career, and most importantly for us, established the character of Marlowe as our protagonist for these classics of the genre of detective fiction. So, what actually happens in this great novel, supposedly? Well, we can begin when private investigator Philip Marlowe is hired by the wealthy and elderly General Sternwood, who's concerned about his wild daughter, Carmen, being blackmailed by bookseller Arthur Geiger. The General also mentions his other daughter, Vivian, who is in a loveless marriage with a man named Rusty Reagan, funny name I know, who has mysteriously disappeared. Sternwood asks Marlowe, find out what's happening, find out what Geiger, the bookseller, has on my daughter Carmen to blackmail her, right? Marlowe learns that Carmen, the daughter, has previously been blackmailed before by a man named Joe Brody, and that Rusty Regan's disappearance, as the husband of the other sister, is connected somehow. When leaving the Sternwood house, that other sister, Vivian, hints Marlowe might be looking for Rusty, but Marlowe keeps his thoughts to himself. So he begins, as you'd expect, by investigating the bookstore. He meets the clerk, and after some shenanigans, discovered it's an illegal pornography operation out of the bookstore. He tails the clerk, and eventually the bookstore owner, Geiger, and stakes out his house. At Geiger's house, he sees Carmen entering. Later he hears gunshots, screams, and cars speeding away. Rushing into the chaotic house, Marlowe finds Geiger dead and Carmen, drunk, drugged, and naked, lying in front of an empty camera. He returns Carmen to General Sternwood's house, their family home, the mansion. But when he returns the next hour, 2 hours maximum, to the Geiger's house, the body's gone. He quickly leaves, and the next day, the police call Marlowe and they inform him that the Sternwood's car has been found in the water with their chauffeur dead inside. Upon investigation by Marlowe, not by the police crucially, we find out the chauffeur had been hit on the head before the car plunged into the water. Suspiciously, the police also ask about the ex-husband, boyfriend, Rusty Reagan. Marlowe continues to investigate, stakes out the bookstore again, for he sees inventory, shall we say, being moved to a different home. Vivian visits, that's the other sister, Vivian visits Marlowe, tells him that her sister Carmen is being blackmailed with the nude photos from the previous night. That empty camera, right? She mentions Eddie Mars, a casino owner, and reveals that Eddie's wife Mona ran off with Rusty, that ex-husband. Strange. So Marlowe revisits Geiger's house and finds Carmen, of all people, attempting to get inside. They search for the photos together this time, but Carmen acts oblivious about the events. Suddenly Eddie Mars enters, claiming to be, of all things, Geiger's landlord. He demands to know why Marlowe is there in the first place, but Marlowe is pretty unaffected by this questioning and assures him he's no serious threat. Marlowe confronts some of the dodgy people at the casino, tries to work out who's blackmailing, and accuses them of taking over the blackmail from Geiger. You know, these casino people knock off Geiger, take off his blackmail with the sister. Carmen arrives with a gun, demanding the photos, but Marlowe disarms her. interrogates Brody. That's one of the casino guys. Not super important. Don't worry about remembering him. And pieces together the story, which is this. Geiger has been blackmailing Carmen, and this casino person, upset about it, killed Geiger, stole the blackmail. That person had been watching Geiger's house and stole it. Suddenly, he's killed. Then, the police investigate. Basically, I was going on a long tangent now. They work out it's people at the casino who have the blackmail. They retrieve the blackmail. They think the immediate case is over. But Marlowe's still troubled by the disappearance of Rusty Reagan. The police assume he's just run off, since everybody points to that, and they just don't believe that Eddie Miles, that guy, would risk murder. Marlowe's summoned to Eddie Miles' casino, where a lot of this is going down, where Vivian is also present. He senses tensions between the two, and after their meeting, Vivian tries to seduce Marlowe, but he rejects her advances. When Marlowe returns home, he finds Carmen in his bed, rejects her too, sort of playing into this trope of the hero, right? And that's true throughout this book. The character of Marlowe is played up. We see his emotions and his instincts repeated, right? There's two instances of rejection here, because Chandler is setting the scene. This is our first time meeting Marlowe, so we have to show his character to the full. Anyway, he's rejected both. Marlowe agrees to meet with an individual who is a henchman of Eddie, but other of Eddie's henchmen, less suspicious, and he tries to kill this person that's talking to Marlowe. Despite that, Marlowe meets them. He learns the whereabouts of Mona, who's this woman that Rusty Reagan ran off with. He goes to the location, a repair shop, but whack on the head, he's knocked out. When he wakes up, he's tied to a chair with Mona. She reveals she hasn't seen Rusty for months and has been hiding out to help Eddie, insisting that he doesn't kill Rusty. She frees him. Together, they kill their captor. The following day, Marlowe visits Sternwood again, and learns the general's still concerned about Rusty's whereabouts. Sternwood offers Marlowe a whole $1,000 to find him. Insane amount of money. As Marlowe leaves, he returns Carmen's gun, and to his surprise, Carmen, the older sister, asks him to teach her how to shoot. They go to an abandoned field where she attempts to shoot him, but Marlowe had loaded the gun with blanks and laughs at her. I mean, crazy scene, right? The shot causes Carmen to have an epileptic seizure right there in the field. Marlowe brings her back to the mansion, confronts Vivian, and pieces together the truth. Carmen had come on to Rusty, but when he rejected her, she killed him. Vivian and Eddie helped cover up the crime. Remember, Vivian had a thing with Eddie, so that's why he helped her. She's covering up her sister's crime with Eddie, and makes up the story that Rusty ran away with Mona, used it as blackmail, to keep it hidden from their father. She admits that she did it to protect her father, and promises to have Carmen institutionalized. With the case resolved, Marlon goes to a local bar and orders several double scotches. Smart move. As he drinks, he reflects on Mona, the strange woman that helped him, but never sees her again. So, since this is the first novel, although tragically not my first video due to a bad planning, I thought I'd give a deeper look into the character of Marlowe super quick. So, Philip Marlowe, our protagonist, is introduced here, and as I've said, his character is ratcheted up in order to show us who he is early and establish him. That final scene, though, of Marlowe drinking alone at the bar is a great reflection of who he is. Philip Marlowe, our protagonist, is at times wise and kind, but most of the time he's witty, cruel, and sarcastic. He speaks in short bursts full of irony, cynicism, and wit, and in a sort of casual fashion that you would expect from someone of that period, and most importantly, of his class of that period. That is that important aspect to him, who he is within society at that point. Was specifically introduced to Marlowe as a detective not out to make quick cash, and he often refuses payment. Interesting though, it's not simply a matter of needing money for his living situation. He doesn't live particularly well. Instead, we can see through various moments where he asks for payment once the job is done, he's not turning down the money because he hates money. He's turning it down because he genuinely wants to get the job done and sees it as a bonus for his work, not the fundamental reason for doing it. And that's evidenced again and again. So, we see through his actions, more so than his words, that he doesn't fit into the typical mould of a detective chasing money. And there's a moral core within Marlowe that drives him, and makes the stories much more interesting because of this. After all, why would we read with anticipation, with excitement about a detective that slowly followed the trail for money? Even the past, like, how would the story unfold if all the detective cared about was money? Marlowe would have stopped halfway through, as happens with so many of these books. The story goes beyond the first case, and a detective who cares about money wouldn't see that, but it's Marlowe's moral crusade of sorts that drives him on and drives the story on with him. Okay, so with all that answered, what themes does Marlowe allow us to explore through The Big Sleep? First off, and most significant for this specific novel, is corruption. The corruption described here is all-encompassing. First, there's the casual kind. That's what Marlowe references to cash for lawyers, for cops, for the district attorney to look the other way. Then there's this systemic kind of cynicism of a justice system that often seems to leave the innocent without justice. That's not only corrupt in the moment, but set up to favour certain people. People who are not like Marlowe, people who are wealthy, like General Stonewood. Lastly, and most pertinent of all to this moment of release, which was 1939, there's the total corruption of American society. Living in the world of California, which is, it's a crazy, chaotic state in flux, especially after the Depression. But before the Second World War, which unifies the country, you see this is a place in chaos of individualism, of a society that people feel is regressing. But it's made interesting by the fact Marlowe is sort of a counterweight to that. Because of this background, we do see Marlowe's spirit of cynicism, though. He's not a wide-eyed, naive person. As mentioned, it's a crucial part of the character. However, the interesting part is the degree to which everybody else is a cynic too, right? Like, the cops, there's this cop that's kind of helpful, called Lieutenant, or Lieutenant, if you're English like me, Lieutenant Oles, who occasionally wants to do the right thing, kind of wants to help Marlowe out. Even the mobsters have occasional glimpses of humanity. In The Long Goodbye, a different novel, we see a mobster that helps a friend, not for money, just because he wants to help an old friend. There are individuals with agency who want to do good, but the system is set up against them, and that's hammered home again and again. But maybe that's what makes Marlowe so interesting as a protagonist. It's what makes him stand out, because there's this dark cloud of cynicism that's hanging over everybody, and his occasional bursts of moral drive, of justice, are little bursts of light that pierce through that and bring variety to the story. And the third theme really shows the degree to which all of this is intertwined, and that is wealth and its role in society. It is the corrupting force that has changed and devastated the system and society, and it's represented in a really harsh light in these novels, and specifically in this one, in The Big Sleep. In this story, the two daughters of the wealthy General Stonewood are absolutely out of touch. They have no idea what reality is, and they're so spoiled by luxury, they wouldn't even really be able to recognise humanity. If it looked them in the face, they just are detached, and that is condemned in not explicit terms, but the normal implied condemnation of that way of life and that attitude towards life. There are some other smaller points that are important, that reveal what the Big Sleep was trying to say, or rather what Chandler was trying to say through it about the time. First, there's that everybody is in a brutal struggle for survival in it. Everybody's looking out for themselves, like Eddie Miles, the casino owner. Everybody's looking out for themselves. That plays into the personal character traits of desperation that is common for all of these characters, and probably was driven by Chandler's own experience with the Great Depression, where his oil businesses floundered and eventually failed. And given this was only released in 1939, it's pretty recent news for him, so it's probably pain that was channeled into this. Then there's the topic of masculinity. As I've said, Marlowe's portrayed in that classic hero cast of a tough American hero, the type tall. I don't think in the films or in the books he has a moustache, but you get what I mean. Classic American hero. But despite this, and some behaviour the modern age would not look kindly on, there is complexity, as always. Marlowe has a degree of nuance that you don't see in other American heroes of that cast, and that's what makes it interesting. That's what makes him interesting. That's why he stays the protagonist. So, The Big Sleep. It has crime, it has cops, it has corruption, it has a great protagonist, it has a truly unique setting, and a fascinating writing style, as all of John's books do. In short, everything you could possibly need, and more, and so much more. I would absolutely give it, I think, an 8. I'd have to rate it really highly, and right now, it's at the number 3 spot. Controversial, I know, to not have it number 1, but watch next week's episode to find out why it's not number 1.